Hey, Rob Anspach here with my take on what's trending on Facebook. Now, a new report just came out that says that Instagram and Snapchat were ranked the worst social media networks for children's mental health. In fact, a study in the UK by, I'll get this right here, the Royal Society for Public Health and the chief executive of the RSPH, Shirley Kramer, states social media has been described as more addictive than cigarettes and alcohol and is now so entrenched in the lives of young people that it is no longer possible to ignore it when talking about young people's mental health issues. She goes on to say, it is interesting to see Instagram and Snapchat ranking as the worst for mental health and well-being. Both platforms are very image-focused, and it appears they may be driving feelings of inadequacy and anxiety in young people. I see that. I see that every day. You know, Snapchat and Instagram are great when used properly. However, they're also used to bully, and in schools, cyberbullying has really increased exponentially over the last few years. Young teen suicide is also on the increase. And what's happening is that kids are more prone now to use social networking, such as Instagram and Snapchat, and less prone to go outside and actually exercise. They're not joining sports. They're not joining scouts. They're not joining clubs. They're becoming distant. Their lack of communication is relegated to their phones. They're not interacting with people. And this study was conducted on, in a survey to 1,500 people. So maybe it's not entirely accurate, but the range that they detected in this study for these young adults was a range of 14 to 24 from across the UK. Now you might be saying, well, my kids in the US, my kids in Australia, my kids in Canada, it doesn't affect them because, this study was made in UK. The UK is pretty darn good when it comes to stuff like this. So, maybe you don't trust the statistics, and that's okay. But look at what your child is doing. And if they're really too entrenched in social networking, maybe it's time to call it quits. A lot of my kids do use Instagram. They use Snapchat. And Instagram and Snapchat, believe it or not, are geared to the millennials, the young generation. And, I've been teaching social media for about 10 years. But most of my audience is in the boomers, the Gen Xers, the over 50 crowd. And I'm trying to convince them to start using Instagram and Snapchat so that they can actually reach out to some of the younger generation. Maybe that's a problem. Maybe it's not. You decide. But I think that we all have to have a healthy balance in our lives with what we do on social networking. Now, the problem is that it's everywhere. And can we escape it? Do we want to? It's really personal preference. I love social media for the interaction, for the, to get to know my clients. But for young adults, their brains are still forming. They still don't have the cognitive, I can't even say it. The cognizance to understand, the addiction that is happening with social media. So I think it's very important that young kids have a hobby. They get involved with sports. They get involved with something other than their phones. On the flip side of this report, which is totally ironic, saying that while Instagram and Snapchat are detrimental to young people's mental health, YouTube has the most positive effect. You know, I think either way, it's good to limit your exposure every day, to get acknowledged. And yes, we want to build trust with our audience, but we don't have to be in front of the computer 24 hours a day. We don't have to be checking our phones constantly. I think it's time that some of us put the phones down for a while, enjoy life. And that includes me. You know, I do these videos to educate, but you know, I also want our young adults out there to understand the ins and outs of what they're doing, and to understand that social networking, if you're constantly on it day in and day out, 24/7, can be a bit of an overload to the noggin. So go out and live life, enjoy life. Well, that's my take, and I'll see you tomorrow.